Okay, so imagine this story. You open up your front door and you see a parade show. Leading the parade is a temporary leader, holding a letter S that is moist. His feet are making noise. An octopus then hears this and puts the man on a table where he is sprayed with the maximum amount of silly string. Afterwards, the man goes a little crazy and he likes to roll to the ball. The ball turns on a foamer and some of the foam gets in his nasal cavity and it smells malodorous. Finally, he grabs some ink and staples and goes home. Now, I just made a story out of something I'd memorize. So what am I trying to memorize? Let's look at it again. You open your front door and you see a parade show. There's a temporary leader holding an S that is moist. His feet are making noise. An octopus hears this and sets him on a table where he's sprayed with the maximum amount of silly string. Then he goes a little crazy and likes to roll to the mall, where they turn on a foamer and a little foam gets in his nasal cavity and it smells malodorous. He finally grabs some ink and staples and then goes home. If you can remember that story, you know the bones of the human skull. And this is the link in the story method. It's not always appropriate to use this method in every situation, but in some it's a really effective way to memorize material. All right, let's look at this more closely. We used the front door for the frontal bone. We used a parade show for the paracetal bone. We remember a temporary leader for the temporal bone. The S that was moist was the ethmoid bone. We used noisy feet for the sphenoid bone. The octopus was supposed to remind you of the occipital bone. It tosses a man on the table, and this is to help us remember mandible. The max amount of silly string should remind us of the maxilla bone. And the reason this guy likes to roll at the mall is because of the lacrimal bone. Lacrimal. The foamer is for the vomer bone. The foam going into his nasal cavity is obviously the nasal bone. And the reason we want it to smell malodorous is because we need to remember the malleus bone. Malodorous, malleus. He finally grabs some ink so we remember incus bone and the staples to remind us of the stapes bone. So what we did was we created strong, bizarre images and we made them into a story to remember the bones of the skull. Like I mentioned before, this method is not always the appropriate method to use for whatever you're going to memorize. In this case it was, and it does work in a lot of cases. You're going to learn several different memory methods in this course, and you will decide, do you want to use the link in the story method or do you want to use the different methods that we're going to teach in this system.